And Angelina Jolie is the UNHCR Goodwill Ambassador. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm so glad you're over in Pakistan, Angelina. You bring so much awareness to what's happening there. Why do you think people haven't paid as much attention to what's happening in Pakistan?
Well, I think it's complicated. I'm here with UNHCR, and they've been in this country for 32 years, and I've been here 4 times, and there's been 4 different reasons to come. There's one crisis after another. They've pretty much confronted every different type of disaster. I think that's one of the reasons. I think people have a fatigue in general when it comes to disaster relief. But if I can say that the thing that I've learned the most in being here is that we tend to focus on one issue at a time because that seems to be what people can absorb and care for. But Pakistan, as you know, is so complex because it has not just the people from the flood and the 18 million affected now, but it still has the 1.7 million Afghan people who are here, and they've been displaced from the flood. And whether or not developers take over that land and they are forced to go back prematurely to Afghanistan, these are very, very tricky things to deal with as well. On top of it, there's still a lot of rebuilding of infrastructure from the earthquake that happened, and then there's also internally displaced from the armed conflict. So there's so many different levels of reasons for displacement and in this country. So
I think that often, and you may have found this as well in your travels, that we tend to think of these places as over there, somewhere else, not here. But when you go, and I was there as well, I mean, you meet people. There are real faces and stories behind these crazy high numbers. Raymond and Zainul Gul are 2 people that you met. Tell me about them. How did you meet them? What did they tell you?
The older couple? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. The couple that I met?
Yeah, you met Raymond and Zainul Gul, I believe. Their house was devastated by the flood.
Yes.
What did they tell you? What did you learn from
them? We met. Well, I think so much. We go to these places, and you always say the same things to the viewer, which is that they would be so moved if they were here, and it's so true. And if they met all these children who are so resilient and are still children and so full of life and love and hope, and it's always so moving. And this was very unique for me because I met this beautiful older couple who are in their 70s, and they'd worked their whole lives. And the man had been in the Pakistani military twice, and he had then lived off a pension, and with that small pension he'd built this home and his family and for his grandchildren, and it was very modest to begin with, but he had something, and now they're both dealing with a lot of sickness, and as you see, I believe in the tape, the woman is so embarrassed with her situation. And the man spoke of the fact that he never felt in his lifetime he's ever going to be able to recuperate what he's lost. That he would never ever have again nice things. That he would never have a nice bed, a nice house, and they'd lived in this place since 1972 and raised their children and their grandchildren there. And in a moment, in a few hours, it was completely gone. And they're really good people, and really just kind, wonderful, hardworking older people who will pass away most likely in this mud-covered area, which is so covered with dirt, and there's feces in the river nearby, and it's so covered in flies, and it doesn't have the dignity that they deserve to live in, that anyone deserves to live in.
It's so heartbreaking to hear that, and I think it's almost more heartbreaking to hear that they're embarrassed to tell you about it. I don't know, how that should make somebody feel. I traveled through these camps, Angelina, where I saw these kids in their tents, in the situations that you're describing, doing their homework, and being a father as well. I don't know. It really got at me because they have dreams and aspirations and hopes, and those things are spread throughout the world evenly. Are you optimistic about the next generation of Pakistan? It is a young country, and it has been devastated so many times now, as you just mentioned.
I think we have no choice but to be optimistic and to have hope. I think if without that we're just lost and things deteriorate. I think it is, this part of the world, they are resilient people. Think of all that they've been hit with, and they continue to move on, to rebuild, to trade, to educate, to learn, they're really trying, and they've fought through a lot, and they'll continue to fight through, and that goes for the Afghani people as well. So you know, we have to support them, and also for all the people that are worried about conflict and this part of the world, and they feel like it's far away, or they're not sure, that they don't understand the corruption, or for all of this. The only way to make for a healthier, more hopeful, stronger Pakistan and Afghanistan is to help support education, is to help people, especially in this time of need, and to not just allow for more devastation and more desperation.
One thing that is worth pointing out as well, you're there right now, I just returned from there. This is ongoing. I think a lot of the reports would have you believe that this is somewhat over, but the way, you know, the flooding continues in some of the parts of the south where I was most recently, there are places still being displaced. Have you gotten a sense of the scope of this? I mean, they say the size of the state of Florida or New England. How do you convey the scope of this to people back home?
I don't know how. You're better at that than I am. You know, I'll say this, that I heard about it, and I thought I'm gonna see a lot of wet areas and tents and people that are, and what I saw was, if people can think about New Orleans and the scale of that and how devastating that is, and how there was so much before you could even rebuild, to clean up. There was so much that was you know, full of toxic materials and death, and that is on a huge scale, and this is no different. That it has to be cleaned and cleared, and when I was standing in one of the houses, it was 9 feet tall, the water. It wasn't just, you know, suddenly this kind of flood that made everything wet for a few feet. It was 9 feet tall, and washed children away from, you know, right out of their parents' hands. It destroyed lives, and it's And as you say, it's very difficult to convey. It's very difficult to say to people in an interview, please care and please help. But I think, you know, we're both thinking that, you know, having been here and met these people, just to say, just remember they're people, they're family, they're lovely, lovely, hardworking people and beautiful children, and they deserve dignity and assistance, and you know, we have to treat them with respect and try to preserve what we can of their livelihood and their future.
You've been in Pakistan a few times, as you said. Do you have a particular affinity for Pakistan? How did that develop, your relationship with this part of the world?
Well, I do for Asia in general, but I did, at first it started with the Afghani refugees. I'd met with them. Strangely enough, my first trip, when working with UNHCR, when working with refugees, you often you just look at kind of numbers and displacement, and you start to think. I think it's a good way to be able to understand what's happening in the world. If you kind of get a gauge of the millions displaced in one area or another, it could tell you a lot about that area. And a few weeks before September 11th, I was reading a lot about how many Afghani people were in Pakistan, and thought that's quite a high number, and I wondered why. And they'd been here for so many years, and so I came here, and I came to Quetta, and I walked around. It was 2001, and then everything has changed since. But when I came on that trip, I met so many. I met just the people, the women who'd fled because they wanted to have an education, and the husbands who fled with them. I remember meeting a husband with yellow eyes because his kidneys had been and liver had been kicked in because he was trying to get his daughters to school, and he was refusing to let them shut his daughters in and not allow them their right to education. So I was very moved by them, and continue to be. And then through them, I've got to know the people of Pakistan who are also extraordinary people.
Do you have specific responsibilities as a Goodwill ambassador, certain things that you must accomplish on the ground there, or how does that work for you?
It's different. It's developed over the years. When I first came out, it was kind of, I would just quietly go into the field and get an education. I just wanted to not speak to the press very much and get an education and spend time with people, which is kind of the nicest thing, to be able to get to know the refugees and the displaced families. And since then, it's developed a little more. I have more responsibility to speak out publicly and to meet with government officials and ministries and speak to them about specifics of right to return and you know, discourage forced returns and so on and so forth. So it's become a little more political.
When you're describing, when you go back home and you're in the States and you're trying to tell your friends about this, do people want to talk to you about what you've seen here in Pakistan? I find that sometimes it's hard because unless you've been on the ground, it's tough to convey. Do you spend a lot of time talking about this with your friends and your family when you get home?
I do. I'll talk to my family. I'll talk to Brad. He's very, you know, he wants to know as much as he can about these issues and every trip. And he's been here as well. He came here with me after the earthquake. Right. I don't know. I don't have a lot of friends I talk to. He's really the only person I talk to. But I'll tell my children. I told my children why I was going, and I explained to them they'd seen the news, and I explained to them why I was packing flashlights and food, and you know, they helped me pack some things. So I think it also you know, helps them to be better people, to understand a little bit about the world.
I know you and I were communicating when I was over there, and you said you were watching the reports. It's kind of funny. My wife won't let my kids sometimes watch because my kids are young, and she thinks it's quite sad and it's tough. How about your kids? I mean, do you encourage them to watch what's happening here? Do you encourage them to talk about it?
I do. It depends. I have children of all different ages, so the older ones are you know, able to watch more. It depends on what the reports are. Sometimes, you know, a lot of times the reports are repeated, so you can watch it and then have them watch it when you know it's okay. But no, I think it's important if we can. Especially my children are from a lot of these countries, so I want them to understand. I want Sahar to understand what's happening in Africa, and the boys to understand you know, what's happening if there's something current in their countries, and for all of them to know about each other's countries as well, and just the world in general. So I do try to teach them as much as I can.
Well, again, I'm just really thrilled you're there. I was watching, you know, when this was happening, and surprised, I think, in some ways that the world wasn't paying more attention, but I think they will now, especially that you're there. So thanks so much, Ambassador. Safe travels. Stay cool as you can out in Pakistan. See you soon.